Right, hello. Just a short, um, in a way, follow on from last weekend's talk, but an introduction to what I'm going to talk about live stream this coming Saturday, 7 p.m. UK time. So it's the work of Mauro Biglino.
You don't say the G.
Biglino. Apologies to him. Many of you will be aware of has gone back to the very original texts for the Bible in the original ancient Hebrew, and basically everything that's been rewritten in the Bible and presented to us for centuries is a lie. Surprise, surprise. And it's just been made up and not surprisingly been used as a means of control. Now I thought it was a bit funny when I started to read through this, because Liz banned me from talking any more about Gobekli Tepe, where I was in Turkey. But funny enough, as I go through the first few pages of the book, the interviewer asks Biglino about Gobekli Tepe and about how it's rewritten history and the place of civilization. So it comes back to that again. But it was interesting, I thought, because it was talking about how in the early texts of Genesis, what has been termed now the Garden of Eden was actually pretty much a place where they did experiments on early humans, I guess, animals, plants, and to make this world, which had became the world for centuries and the beginnings of civilization, including manufacturing Eve as a genetic experiment. And what I was thinking is, they were talking there about the introduction of agriculture, which seemed to just suddenly spring up, and there's been talk about that, about where Gobekli Tepe is. It's where it is in history. The conventional historians, archaeologists thought that people were just hunter-gatherers at that stage. Agriculture hadn't been invented at the time when Gobekli Tepe, or discovered, whichever way you want to put it, when Gobekli Tepe was made and the other sites around there. And it then seemed to become a thing in the years following it. But what they were saying as well in this book is that agriculture becomes part of the means of controlling people, because it involves parceling off land. Land becomes a commodity, and it's all part of control, whereas people before just roamed around being able to hunt and gather. Now it was all part of this control network, and there was an overlord who owned the land that people needed to maybe pay some sort of tithes or rents to and taxes to, and all of these things are referred to in the early pages of the Bible. So that made me think about the Jimmy Corsetti Bright Insight video that's become a bit viral in recent days, where he made a very good point looking at the people who have now got control of the site of Gobekli Tepe, and its company, I think Dogus is the name, but go to his Bright Insight to get the full details, owned by a billionaire who's with the World Economic Forum. And so essentially this crazy decision where they're saying they're not going to excavate any more of the site, when there's about 90+% of the site that's still covered up, and for some reason archaeologists don't want to explore any further this incredible groundbreaking site. They want to leave it, quote, for future generations. And people have been surmising what could be the reasons for that. And many surmising that it might reveal further things that tell us about our origins that they don't want us to know. And I was thinking that one of the things that they may not want us to know, maybe in my talk last weekend, I was discussing Andrew Collins' theories and talking about how the impact of the Denisovan, that branch of sort of different kind of hominids that may be interrelated with modern humans at the time of sort of the Neanderthals, but around the area around current Siberia, and how those interactions may have led to shamanism, practices of shamanism, and how a lot of that maybe then moved down into the area of Gobekli Tepe and was inspiration for the builders of those sites there. And I was wondering, because it talks in the Biglinos book about how there isn't actually, I mean, at the moment what I've read is talking about the Old Testament, which is obviously taken from books of Judaism, from the Torah, I believe. So it doesn't actually refer to a god as such. It's the Elohim and Yahweh, who seems like is described as like a warrior, and obviously many gruesome deaths, slaughter of children, women, as part of conquests, and maybe there's no talk of transcendence. So he was saying in the Bible, it doesn't come across as a spiritual text. It's just an account of conquests and that sort of thing. So perhaps it was buried in the first place, because obviously these sites were buried, and for centuries no one knew they were there. Perhaps they were buried initially, perhaps by the same people who started these civilizations of enslavement, because they didn't want people, this new breed of humans, they didn't want them to know about this form of inspiration, this idea that the spirit can transcend to an afterlife, to another world. They didn't want that. They wanted to control people's spirituality, their idea of something special within them, because they wanted it to be run by an elite who could control the information, can control the knowledge, control the people, and enslave them. So perhaps now why the World Economic Forum doesn't want anything further to be revealed is because they don't want people to really get in touch with what is inside them, and they want them to remain enslaved, as a number of people have been talking about, like Adam Green, No More News, David Icke, a number of people in the alternative media have signed themselves up to forms of Christianity recently.
Icke calls it the mainstream alternative media.
Yeah, and many
because they're just driving us right back to enslavement.
Many of which have just come into the picture quite recently as alternative people, and it does seem that they're now, as Liz says, driving us into a certain way of thinking. Maybe just another form of imprisonment. We're talking people like
Russell Brand and getting baptised and all of that.
Yeah. So I think this is timed. It's really, although it's something that the Gobekli Tepe is, 10, 12,000 years old, I think it's 100% completely relevant to what's happening to us today. And I'm looking forward to researching more about this fascinating guy and his translations of the Bible, going back to the origins of the original language in which it was written. So I want to talk in far more depth on Saturday on the live stream, and I hope you can join me then.